Mike Turner had always been known around Dallas for his steady hands and honest work. At 39, he wasn't the type of man who craved attention or recognition. He simply wanted to fix cars, take care of his modest little home, and provide for his family. That day had been long and exhausting. He'd worked through a string of brake jobs, oil changes and engine troubles, and by evening all he wanted was to wash the grease from his arms and rest. But as he stepped outside the auto shop, fate placed someone in his path who would test his values. A young woman stood near the edge of the shop's lot. Her car tilted awkwardly on one side. The tire had blown out, and she was fumbling with her phone, looking increasingly desperate as cars sped by. Mike noticed her right away. Her face showed the kind of nervousness that came when someone felt helpless. She glanced around, unsure who to turn to. Mike didn't hesitate. He put down his toolbox, walked toward her, and asked kindly if she needed help. She admitted she had no idea how to change a tire. Mike didn't judge her, nor did he hesitate. He crouched down by the car, loosening the lug nuts with practiced ease. Years of being a mechanic made the job second nature to him. The woman looked on with relief and gratitude, clearly overwhelmed by his kindness. "I don't know how to thank you," she said softly. Mike gave a small smile, replying, "Don't worry about it. Happens to the best of us." In less than 15 minutes, the car was road-ready again. She offered him money, but he gently refused. This wasn't the first time Mike had helped someone for free. It was part of who he was. He believed kindness wasn't a service you charged for, it was something you gave because it was right. But in this particular shop, under this particular boss, such gestures were not appreciated. Mike's boss, Carl, was a man driven by numbers, deadlines, and money above all else. He'd made it clear time and time again, "We're not running a charity here." To him, every minute Mike spent not billing a customer was a loss, and unfortunately Carl had seen the entire exchange. Carl stood at the shop entrance, his arms crossed and his jaw tight with disapproval. Mike saw him watching but didn't flinch. He finished tightening the bolts, lowered the car, and gave the woman instructions to check her tires regularly. She thanked him again, her gratitude shining through her eyes. Driving off, she left Mike with a sense of quiet satisfaction. He wiped his hands on his rag and walked back toward the garage, where Carl muttered, "You'll regret that." Mike simply kept his head down, unwilling to argue. His conscience was clear. That night, Mike returned home to his small two-bedroom house. His wife, Sarah, noticed the tiredness in his face, but he brushed it off. They sat down for dinner with their two kids, ages 9 and 11, laughing and sharing stories from their day. Mike didn't mention the incident with the flat tire. It wasn't important to him. It was just another small act of decency. As he tucked his kids into bed, he felt content. He had always believed in setting an example, that doing good for others mattered more than personal gain. The next morning, Mike arrived at the shop as usual, coffee in hand and ready for another day. But something was different. Carl was waiting for him in the office, the air thick with tension. Mike entered, sensing trouble. "Close the door," Carl ordered sharply. Mike complied, sitting down across from him. Carl leaned forward, his voice low and angry. "I told you before, we don't waste time here. Yesterday you stopped work to play Good Samaritan. You cost us money. I can't have that." Mike tried to explain, but Carl cut him off with a wave of his hand. Mike's heart sank as the words came out, "You're fired. Pack up your things." For a moment he just sat there, stunned. He had worked for this shop for years, given his sweat and skills, and this was how it ended. Not for incompetence, not for dishonesty, but for helping a stranger. He felt a swell of anger. But beneath it, a strange calmness too. Slowly, he nodded, stood up and said, "If that's how you want it, then fine." Gathering his few personal tools, he walked out, his co-workers glancing at him with pity. Carrying his toolbox, Mike left the shop behind. The hot Texas sun beat down as he crossed the parking lot, his mind swirling with emotions. He wasn't sure how he'd explain this to Sarah, or what it would mean for their bills, their mortgage, their kids. Still, deep down, he didn't regret helping the young woman. He knew that if the same situation presented itself again, he would do exactly the same thing. Because to him, integrity wasn't negotiable, it was who he was. Sometimes that came at a cost, but it was a cost he was willing to pay. The walk to his truck felt heavier that day. He slid the toolbox into the back, climbed into the driver's seat, and sat for a moment, staring at the steering wheel. He thought about his father, who had raised him with the same values. Do what's right, even if no one sees, his father used to say. Those words echoed in Mike's mind, and they comforted him. Losing a job was painful, but losing his character would have been far worse. He started the engine and drove home, uncertain of the future, but proud of his decision. When Mike arrived home earlier than usual, Sarah looked surprised. She asked why he was back, and he explained what happened. For a moment, her face clouded with worry, but then she reached out, touched his hand, and said, "You did the right thing, Mike. Jobs can come and go. What matters is that you're the kind of man our kids can look up to." Those words steadied him. He wasn't alone in this battle. He had his family's support, and that gave him strength. Even as doubt lingered, hope flickered quietly in the background. The day stretched long as Mike tried to process everything. He sat on the porch with his coffee, watching his kids play in the yard. He thought about the young woman he'd helped. Did she make it home safe? Did she tell her family? Maybe they'd forget him in a day. Maybe it meant nothing at all, but maybe, just maybe, it meant more than he realized. Sometimes life had a way of taking small acts and turning them into something unexpected. He didn't know it yet, but his story was far from over. As night fell, Mike tucked his children into bed again, just as he had the night before. But this time there was a heaviness in his chest. He wondered how long he could go without steady work. Mechanics weren't hard to find in Dallas, but good-paying jobs with benefits were another story. Still, he tried to smile for his kids, assuring them that everything would be okay. Deep down, he prayed for a break, for a sign that his choice to stay true to his values hadn't been in vain. The silence of the night held that prayer gently. Mike didn't know it, but change was already on the horizon. Somewhere else in the city, conversations were happening that would soon circle back to him. The kindness he thought had gone unnoticed had reached the ears of someone who mattered, a person with power, resources, and gratitude. For now, Mike drifted to sleep with uncertainty in his heart, never imagining that the very next day his quiet street would be shaken by the roar of engines, and his life would be pulled into a story bigger than anything he had ever dreamed of. The sun had barely risen over Dallas when the stillness of Mike Turner's street was broken by the unmistakable rumble of engines. It wasn't the sound of one or two cars, but an entire convoy. 7 gleaming black SUVs rolled slowly into the neighborhood, their tinted windows catching the light as they lined up outside his modest home. Neighbors froze. In their yards, eyes wide, whispering among themselves. Curtains twitched, blinds bent, and children stopped their morning play. Nothing like this had ever happened on this quiet street. Inside his house, Mike frowned, confused by the sudden commotion. He set down his coffee mug, a sense of unease crawling over him. The sight of so many vehicles, all black, all identical, was intimidating. He wasn't a man who drew attention, yet here was attention arriving at his doorstep in the most dramatic fashion possible. Mike's first thought was that something was wrong, maybe even dangerous. He quickly stepped outside, wiping his hands on his jeans. His heart raced as the lead SUV's door opened. From inside emerged a tall man in an expensive gray suit, his presence commanding immediate respect. The man's polished shoes clicked against the pavement as he approached, confidence in every step. His salt-and-pepper hair and sharp gaze gave him the look of someone who had long lived in boardrooms, and at the top of skyscrapers. The neighbors recognized power when they saw it. The man was Daniel Hayes, CEO of one of Houston's largest energy corporations, a name often in the news. Though far removed from this simple Dallas neighborhood, Mike blinked in disbelief, wondering why such a man would come here, to his front yard of all places. Before Mike could find his words, the rear door of the SUV opened again. Out stepped a young woman, familiar and smiling warmly. It was the same woman he had helped just days ago, stranded on the side of the road with a flat tire. She looked different now, no longer anxious or stranded, but confident, dressed in elegant simplicity that spoke of her background. She walked straight toward Mike, her gratitude shining in her eyes. The shock hit him like a wave. He hadn't known her identity before. Now everything made sudden, overwhelming sense. Daniel Hayes stopped in front of Mike, extending his hand with a firm grip. "Mike Turner," he said in a deep, commanding voice. "You don't know me, but yesterday, yet you helped my daughter when she needed it most." Mike hesitated, shaking the man's hand slowly, still bewildered. Daniel's words carried weight, each one deliberate. "I've spent my life building businesses, hiring countless people, but integrity like yours, doing the right thing without expecting anything in return, that can't be fired. It's a quality too rare to ignore." His eyes studied Mike as if measuring his character. Mike's jaw tightened, emotions swirling. He glanced at the woman, who gave him a small nod, silently confirming the story. She spoke softly, her voice carrying the sincerity of someone who meant every word. "I tried to tell my father what you did, how you didn't even think twice before helping me. You didn't care about money or inconvenience or getting in trouble with your boss. You just helped." Her words hung in the air, touching not just Mike, but the entire crowd of neighbors listening from porches and windows. Mike felt his throat tighten. The scene was surreal. Only yesterday he had left his job in humiliation, carrying his toolbox with uncertainty about the future. And now, less than 24 hours later, the CEO of a major corporation was standing in his yard, praising him for the very thing he had been punished for. His neighbors, who had seen him leave for work every day without fanfare, now watched in stunned silence as this extraordinary moment unfolded. Mike cleared his throat, unsure what to say. "I just did what anyone would have done," he muttered, his humility shining through. Daniel Hayes shook his head firmly. "No, not anyone. Many people would have walked by. Some might have stopped, but only for a price. You acted out of pure decency, without hesitation. That matters more than you realize." He glanced around at the SUVs behind him, filled with aides and security detail, all waiting patiently. "I didn't bring my team here to intimidate," he added with a half-smile. "I brought them because this moment matters. It matters that people like you exist, and it matters that others see what integrity really looks like." The sincerity was undeniable. The young woman stepped closer, her eyes filled with gratitude. "I never even got your name that day," she admitted. "I left, thinking I'd never see you again. But I told my father everything, how calm you were, how you refused money, how you made me feel safe. I couldn't stop thinking about it." Her voice wavered slightly, genuine, emotion in her tone. "You didn't just fix a tire, Mike. You showed me there are still people who do good because it's right. That's rare and it's worth honoring." Mike's chest swelled with unexpected emotion. The neighborhood was dead silent now. Even the hum of passing cars seemed to fade into the background. Mike's children, peeking from the front window, whispered excitedly to their mother, Sarah, who had come to the doorway in astonishment. She held her breath as she watched her husband standing among powerful men, being recognized for something simple yet extraordinary. To her, it confirmed what she had always known, that Mike's quiet, Strength and integrity set him apart. Tears stung her eyes as she realized their lives were about to change in ways they couldn't yet imagine. Mike rubbed the back of his neck, still overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say," he confessed honestly. "I'm just a mechanic. I fix cars. That's all I know." Daniel Hayes smiled, his expression softening. "That's not all you are. You're a man with values, and that's something you can't teach. Skills can be learned. Integrity cannot." He paused, then added, "I've come here not just to thank you, but to offer you an opportunity, something that will let you use your talents while honoring the character you've shown. I don't make these offers lightly, Mike." Mike blinked, stunned by the words. His neighbors leaned in closer to their windows, eager to catch every detail. Sarah stepped outside quietly, standing beside her husband, her hand slipping into his. The warmth of her touch steadied him, grounding him in the whirlwind of events. Daniel Hayes continued, his gaze shifting between them. "You lost a job yesterday, for helping someone. Today, I'm here to tell you that loss was only a door closing. I intend to open another one that may change everything for you and your family." His voice carried conviction. The weight of the moment pressed down on Mike as he processed the surreal turn his life had taken. Just hours ago, he had felt defeated, unsure of how he would provide for his family. Now, standing in his yard with 7 black SUVs lined up like a protective wall, he was being offered a chance at redemption, perhaps even more than redemption. His mind raced with questions, doubts, and possibilities. But beneath it all was one simple truth. He had done the right thing, and now somehow that choice was coming back to him in ways he never expected. As the morning sun rose higher, casting golden light across the street, Mike realized his life would never be the same again. What had started as a simple act of kindness had grown into something far greater. The neighbors would talk about this day for years. His children would remember it as the morning when 7 black SUVs pulled up to their house, changing everything. And for Mike, it was the moment he understood that doing good, even in small ways, could ripple outward until it touched the most powerful corners of the world. Mike stood frozen on his porch as Daniel Hayes finished speaking, his heart pounding with disbelief. He had expected nothing more than a thank you, maybe a handshake, but this, the thought of being offered a place in one of the most powerful companies in Texas, was overwhelming. Sarah squeezed his hand tighter, grounding him as his emotions swirled between shock, humility, and hope. Daniel's calm yet commanding tone left no doubt that this was real. The same man who had been fired for showing kindness now stood at the doorway of a life-changing opportunity. Daniel gestured toward the SUVs. "Come with us, Mike. Let me show you what I have in mind." The request was simple, yet it carried the weight of destiny. Mike exchanged a glance with Sarah, who nodded encouragingly. With a deep breath, he followed Daniel and his daughter into the lead SUV, sliding onto plush leather seats that felt worlds away from the greasy benches of the auto shop. As the convoy rolled forward, Mike stared out the tinted windows, the familiar streets of his neighborhood fading behind him. A new path was unfolding before his eyes. The ride to Houston was quiet but full of unspoken energy. Daniel occasionally glanced at Mike, as though studying him, while his daughter offered reassuring smiles. Mike, though humbled, felt nervous, unsure if he truly belonged in this world of wealth and influence. When the convoy finally pulled into the towering headquarters of Hayes Automotive, Mike's breath caught in his throat. The glass and steel building stretched high into the sky, reflecting the morning light. Workers in suits and ties hurried through revolving doors. Mike rubbed his calloused hands together, acutely aware of the grease stains that never seemed to wash away. Inside, the headquarters was nothing short of breathtaking. Sleek marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers, and the air smelled faintly of polished wood and ambition. Employees glanced up in surprise as their CEO walked in with a mechanic in worn jeans and a flannel shirt. Mike felt the weight of their stares, but pressed on, determined not to shrink. Daniel led him straight to an executive floor, where large glass walls overlooked the bustling city. "This," Daniel said, sweeping his hand toward the view, "is where ideas become reality, and I think you have the right kind of heart to help us build something new." Mike frowned slightly. "Sir, with all due respect, and I'm just a mechanic. I fix cars. I've never run a business, never led a team. I don't know if I'm the man you're looking for." Daniel leaned back, his eyes sharp yet kind. "Mike, skill can be taught, knowledge can be learned, but integrity, that's something no book or classroom can give you. I've seen hundreds of resumes filled with degrees and credentials, but none of those men stood on a roadside to help a stranger without expecting a reward. That's why you're here." His words struck deep. Daniel continued, his voice steady. "We're launching a new division, luxury cars, tailored for clients who value both engineering and humanity. Not just machines, but experiences, and I want you to lead it. You understand cars inside and out, but more importantly, you understand people. You know what it means to serve, to listen, to do the right thing when no one's watching. That's leadership, Mike, and leadership is what I need." Mike's head spun at the enormity of the offer. A new division, leadership, office walls instead of oil-stained floors. It sounded impossible, yet it was real. Mike's first instinct was to decline. Fear gripped him, fear of failing, fear of being out of place, fear of not measuring up. But then Sarah's face flashed in his mind, along with his children's hopeful eyes that morning. He thought about the years he had sacrificed at the shop, working tirelessly to provide, never asking for more. Maybe this was the chance life was finally giving back. Slowly, he lifted his chin. "If you believe I can do this," he said softly, "then I'll give it everything I have." Daniel's lips curved into a satisfied smile. Over the next weeks, Mike's life transformed beyond recognition. Instead of pulling wrenches in a greasy garage, he now wore pressed shirts and sat at polished conference tables. Yet, he never abandoned who he was. He listened intently to engineers, asked thoughtful questions, and treated every employee, from janitors to designers, with equal respect. His humility won hearts quickly. People who at first doubted the mechanic in the corner office soon realized he brought something rare: authenticity. Under his guidance, the luxury car division didn't just focus on horsepower and design, but on values, safety, and trust. Sarah adjusted to the change with quiet pride. Though their lifestyle grew more comfortable, she noticed her husband remained grounded, still fixing neighbors' cars in the driveway on weekends, still teaching his kids to value kindness over wealth. Reporters soon caught wind of the story the mechanic fired for helping a woman, only to be recruited by her billionaire father. It became a headline. Across newspapers and television screens, integrity lands, mechanic dream job. Cameras flocked to their home, but Mike never sought fame. Only wanted to show his children that doing good was never wasted. One afternoon, during a press interview, a reporter leaned forward eagerly. "Mr. Turner, what do you think was the turning point in all this? Was it luck, fate, or something else?" Mike chuckled softly, glancing at Sarah, who stood just off camera. "It wasn't luck," he said firmly. "I just helped someone who needed it. That's all. I didn't know who she was, and I didn't care. She needed help, and I was there. If there's any lesson here, it's that kindness costs nothing, but it can change everything." His words struck a chord, with millions watching. Within months, the luxury car division flourished under Mike's leadership. Clients appreciated the unique approach. Vehicles designed not just for status, but for comfort, safety, and connection. The division's motto, inspired by Mike's story, "Returner driven by integrity." Employees wore it proudly, knowing their leader lived those words daily. Daniel Hayes watched from his executive suite, quietly satisfied. He had taken a gamble on a man with no corporate experience, And it had paid off beyond expectation. More importantly, he had reminded his entire company of the true foundation of business, not profit, but people. Mike's children, once embarrassed that their father worked long, dirty hours at a garage, now walked taller. At school, they proudly told their friends, "My dad helps people." That's why he got his new job. Sarah often watched them, tears in her eyes, realizing how differently their lives were shaping up. But she knew none of this had changed Mike's essence. He was still the man who would stop on the side of the road without hesitation, still the husband who held her hand when times were tough. Success hadn't made him someone new, it had revealed who he truly was. As the story spread nationwide, strangers wrote letters and emails, thanking Mike for reminding them of the power of simple kindness. He became a quiet symbol of hope, proof that good deeds didn't vanish into the air. They rippled outward, reaching places you'd never expect. One evening, as Mike sat on his porch with Sarah, he reflected aloud, "Funny, isn't it? I lost my job for helping someone, and that was the best thing that ever happened to me." Sarah leaned her head against his shoulder, smiling. Because sometimes doing the right thing is its own reward. Years later, when Mike looked back on those pivotal days, he didn't remember the fear of losing his job or the shock of SUVs pulling up to his home. What he remembered most was the moment he decided to act without thinking of consequences. That choice, simple, human, and selfless, had opened doors he never knew existed. He realized then that life has a way of honoring those who lead with heart. And as he guided his company, loved his family, and continued to live humbly, he carried one truth with him always: no good deed ever goes unnoticed.